The elevator doors slid open to reveal three men, in expensive suits, surrounding a woman pressed against the back wall. Her briefcase clutched like a shield, eyes wide with the kind of fear that comes when you realize no one is coming to help. Marcus stepped inside anyway, his daughter's tiny hand warm in his, her school backpack bouncing against his hip as she chattered about finger paints and goldfish crackers, completely oblivious to the predators sharing their confined space. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The elevator doors slid open with a soft, mechanical whisper. Marcus Chen stepped forward, his 4-year-old daughter Lily's hand tucked securely in his, her purple backpack bouncing against his hip. The familiar weight of his messenger bag pulled at his shoulder laptop, client files, the detritus of a consulting practice that paid the bills but never quite felt like enough. "Daddy, can we get ice cream after we pick up my art project?" Lily's voice carried the particular brand of excitement that only comes with being 4 and having just finished your first week of pre-K. "We'll see, sweetheart." His thumb traced across her knuckles, a gesture so automatic he barely registered it anymore. "Depends how long." The words died in his throat. 3 men in expensive suits occupied the elevator's back corner, their bodies forming a loose semicircle around a woman pressed against the rear wall. Her charcoal blazer was wrinkled, one button hanging by a thread. Dark hair escaped from what had probably been a perfect chignon that morning. She clutched a leather briefcase against her chest like armor, knuckles white with the effort. Her eyes met his dark brown, wide with the particular kind of fear that comes when you realize the cavalry isn't coming. The tallest of the men, silver-haired with the kind of tan that cost money, glanced over his shoulder. His smile never reached his eyes. "Going up?" Marcus hesitated for exactly 1 heartbeat. Lily tugged at his hand, impatient with the delay, her light-up sneakers tapping against the marble floor. He stepped inside. 23rd floor, he said quietly, positioning himself and Lily near the control panel. His finger hovered over the button, but the 23rd was already illuminated. Of course it was. The doors whispered shut. "Daddy, why is that lady sad?" Lily's voice cut through the elevator's mechanical hum with the brutal honesty of childhood. The woman's eyes flickered down to Lily, something shifting in her expression. Not relief, exactly, but a recognition that the dynamics had changed. "She's not sad, sweetheart," Marcus said, his voice carrying just enough edge to let the 3 men know he was paying attention. Sometimes, adults just look serious when they're thinking about work. The silver-haired man, clearly the leader, turned fully now. His smile widened, but it was the kind of smile that belonged in a boardroom, not an elevator with a trapped woman and a small child. "Cute kid," he said. "You must be proud." Marcus's hand tightened fractionally around Lily's. "I am." The elevator climbed. 10th floor, 11th. The silence stretched like a held breath. "You know," the second man spoke up, younger, with the kind of aggressive jawline that suggested he'd peaked in college. "This is a private conversation we're having here." "Is it?" Marcus kept his tone conversational, but shifted slightly, putting his body more directly between the men and his daughter. "Funny. I don't see any private signs." Lily, oblivious to the undercurrents, had noticed the woman's briefcase. "That's a really pretty bag," she announced with 4-year-old diplomacy. "I have a purse too, but it's at home. It has a unicorn on it." Despite everything, the woman's mouth twitched upward. "I bet it's beautiful," she said, her voice steadier than Marcus had expected. Professional. Used to being heard in rooms full of men who would rather she wasn't there. 15th floor. 16th. The third man, compact, with the build of someone who spent serious time in expensive gyms, stepped forward. "Look, friend. Why don't you and your daughter take the next car? This one's gotten a little crowded." The word friend carried no friendship whatsoever. Marcus felt Lily press closer to his leg, finally sensing that something wasn't quite right. Her small hand found his free one, threading their fingers together with the automatic trust that made his chest tight. Actually, Marcus said, his voice carrying the calm that came from 3 years of single parenthood and the knowledge that backing down wasn't an option when your daughter was watching. I think we're exactly where we need to be. The silver-haired man's smile finally cracked. That's unfortunate. 18th floor. 19th. Daddy? Lily's voice was smaller now. I want to go home. We will, baby. Very soon. The woman, he still didn't know her name, met his eyes again. This time, there was something else there. Not just fear, but calculation. She was measuring him, trying to figure out if he was really help or just another complication. He gave her the slightest nod. I see you. Her grip on the briefcase shifted, one hand moving to the zipper. Whatever was in there, she thought it was worth protecting. 21st floor. 22nd. You know what? The gym-built man moved closer, his voice dropping. Maybe you should worry about your own business, Dad. Kids can get hurt when adults don't pay attention. The threat landed like a physical blow. Marcus's world narrowed to a pinpoint. The weight of Lily's hand in his. The woman's quick intake of breath. The mechanical hum of the elevator climbing toward a floor where, he was beginning to understand, something very bad had been planned. 23rd floor. The elevator shuddered to a stop. Here's what's going to happen, the silver-haired man said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to having his orders followed. The doors are going to open. You're going to take your daughter and walk away. And you're going to forget you saw anything here. The numbers above the door flicked from 22 to 23. Marcus looked down at Lily, who was staring up at him with complete faith that Daddy would make everything okay. The way she always did when thunderstorms rattled the apartment windows, or when she had nightmares about monsters under her bed. He looked at the woman, pressed against the elevator wall like prey. The door chimed. Wrong day, gentlemen, Marcus said quietly. The doors began to slide open, and Marcus Chen, single father, failed novelist, reluctant hero, he made a choice that would change everything. Instead of stepping out, he hit the emergency stop button. The elevator lurched to a halt between floors, the doors sliding shut again with mechanical finality. The overhead lights flickered once, then steadied, casting everything in harsh fluorescent clarity. What the hell? The younger man started forward. Emergency stop, Marcus said conversationally, as if he'd just commented on the weather. Safety feature. Prevents accidents. Lily looked up at him, confusion creasing her small forehead. Daddy, the elevator is broken. Not broken, sweetheart. Just taking a little break. The woman had gone very still, her dark eyes fixed on Marcus, with an intensity that made him think of a chess player, realizing the game had just changed in ways she hadn't anticipated. The silver-haired man's composure cracked completely. You have no idea what you're doing. Actually, Marcus said, surprised by how steady his own voice sounded. I think I know exactly what I'm doing. He reached into his messenger bag, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out his phone. The three men tensed, hands moving inside their jackets in a way that made Marcus's blood go cold. Easy, he said. Just showing you something. He held up the phone so they could see the screen. The camera app was open, red recording dot pulsing steadily. Started recording the moment I stepped in here. He lied smoothly. Funny thing about cloud storage uploads automatically, even if something happens to the phone. The compact man's face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? Marcus pocketed the phone again. Want to find out? Lily tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, I'm scared. He knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level, his body shielding her from the three men, who were having what looked like a very quiet, very intense argument behind him. I know, baby. But Daddy needs you to be brave for just a little bit longer, okay? Can you do that for me? She nodded solemnly, her small face set with determination that made his heart break and soar simultaneously. Good girl. He kissed her forehead. Now, I want you to sit right here by the buttons, and if Daddy says so, you press the one that says, alarm, okay? The red one? Okay, Daddy. He stood, turning back to face the three men, and the woman who had become the center of this strange, desperate moment. Now then, he said, his voice carrying a calm he didn't feel. I think it's time we all had a proper conversation. The woman stepped forward, no longer pressed against the wall. Her briefcase was still clutched tight, but her posture had changed straighter, more authoritative. My name is Sarah Chen, she said, and Marcus felt a jolt of recognition at the shared surname, though he was certain they weren't related. I'm the CEO of Meridian Technologies. And these men have been trying to force me to sign documents that would essentially hand over my company to their employer. Industrial espionage, the silver-haired man said, with a laugh that held no humor. That's a very serious accusation, Miss Chen. Almost as serious as false imprisonment. He gestured around the stopped elevator. False imprisonment, Marcus repeated thoughtfully. Interesting choice of words. What would you call three men cornering a woman in an elevator? A private business meeting. Daddy. Lily piped up from her position by the control panel. Are these the bad men? Out of the mouths of babes. Sarah Chen, CEO. Not just some random businesswoman, looked down at Lily with something that might have been a smile. Yes, sweetheart. These are definitely the bad men. The silver-haired man's face hardened. Miss Chen, you're making this much more difficult than it needs to be. The offer on the table is more than fair. Your shareholders will thank you. My shareholders didn't elect me to sell out to corporate raiders. Corporate raiders. The compact man stepped forward again. That's rich. Coming from someone whose company is hemorrhaging money and whose board is ready to vote her out. Something flickered across Sarah's face, pain. Maybe, or fear. But she held her ground. The board serves at my pleasure, she said. And they know the value of what we've built. What you've built is about to collapse. We're offering you a way out that lets you save face. Marcus watched this exchange with growing understanding. This wasn't just about money or corporate takeovers. This was about power, about men who thought they could intimidate a woman into giving up something she'd built with her own hands. It was about bullies who counted on bystanders looking the other way. The thing is, Marcus said, drawing their attention back to him, I don't think Miss Chen wants your way out. This doesn't concern you, the younger man snapped. Actually, it does. Marcus felt Lily's small hand slip into his again. Her silent show of support, giving him strength he didn't know he had. See, I spent most of my 20s writing stories about heroes. Never published any of them, but I learned a lot about how these things work. He paused, letting that sink in. Heroes don't walk away when someone needs help, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's scary, even when they've got their 4-year-old daughter with them and really just want to pick up her art project and go home. The elevator swayed slightly, a reminder that they were suspended between floors, between moments, between choices that couldn't be taken back. So here's what's going to happen, Marcus continued. I'm going to start this elevator again. We're all going to ride down to the lobby together, like civilized people, and then we're going to part ways. And Miss Chen is going to make her own decisions about her company without any more encouragement. The three men exchanged glances. The silver-haired one stepped forward, his voice dropping to something that was probably meant to be menacing. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Marcus looked down at Lily, who was watching everything with the wide-eyed attention of a child, witnessing something she didn't fully understand, but knew was important. Then he looked at Sarah Chen, who had built something worth fighting for, and was being told to give it up, because that's how the world worked. Finally, he looked back at the three men who had turned an elevator into a trap. You know what? He said quietly. You're absolutely right. I don't know who you are, but I know who I am. He reached over and released the emergency stop. The elevator shuddered back to life. The elevator descended in mechanical silence, numbers counting backward like a timer on something that couldn't be stopped. 22, 21, 20. Marcus kept his eyes on the digital display, hyper-aware of Lily's small hand in his, of Sarah Chen's controlled breathing, of the three men who had gone from predators to something more dangerous, cornered animals with nothing left to lose. 19. 18. "You're making a mistake," the silver-haired man said, his voice carrying the kind of certainty that came from years of having his threats taken seriously. "A very expensive mistake." "Daddy," Lily whispered, tugging at his sleeve. "Why is that man talking like the scary voice in my cartoons?" Sarah Chen made a sound that might have been a laugh if it hadn't been so sharp around the edges. "Because some people never learn to use their inside voices, sweetheart." 17. 16. The compact man stepped closer, his gym-built frame designed to intimidate. "You think this ends when we reach the lobby? You think you just walk away from this?" Marcus felt something shift inside him. Not fear, exactly, but a crystalline clarity that came from understanding exactly what was at stake. He'd spent 3 years learning that sometimes being a father meant standing between your child and the world's sharp edges. This was just another Tuesday. "I think," he said quietly, "that you're about to find out what happens when you threaten someone's daughter." 15. 14. The younger man laughed, but it carried no humor. "Tough guy now? What are you going to do, Dad? Take us all on?" "I don't have to." Marcus pulled out his phone again, thumb hovering over the screen. "I just have to make a call." "To who? The police?" "By the time they get here, to my brother." The three men exchanged glances. The silver-haired one stepped forward. "Your brother?" "Detective Marcus Chen," Marcus said, letting the lie roll off his tongue with practiced ease. "Homicide. He's very protective of family." It wasn't entirely untrue. His brother David was in Law Enforcement Transit Authority security, which was basically police work if you squinted and had an active imagination. And he was protective of family, in the way that younger brothers who'd grown up scrapping in Queens playgrounds tended to be. 13. 12. Sarah Chen was watching him with something that looked like admiration mixed with concern. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "I can handle." "No." The word came out sharper than he'd intended. He softened his voice, conscious of Lily listening to every word. "I mean, I'm sure you can. But you shouldn't have to." 11. 10. The elevator was slowing now, approaching the lobby where other people would be witnesses, complications, the possibility of actual consequences for men who were used to operating in shadows and boardrooms, where intimidation was just another negotiating tactic. "Last chance," the silver-haired man said. "Walk away, take your daughter and go home, forget you were ever here." 9. 8. Marcus looked down at Lily, who was staring up at him with absolute trust. The kind of faith that came from never having reason to doubt that Daddy would keep her safe. He thought about the stories he'd written in his 20s heroes, who always knew the right thing to do, who never hesitated when someone needed saving. He'd never been able to make those stories work on the page, never found the truth in them. 7. 6. Now he understood why. Real heroism wasn't about certainty. It was about doing the right thing even when you were terrified, even when you didn't know how it would end, even when the smart play was to walk away and let someone else deal with the consequences. 5. 4. "You know what I keep thinking about," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the elevator's mechanical hum. "My daughter is going to remember this day for the rest of her life, and someday, when she's older, she's going to ask me about it." 3. 2. "And I want to be able to tell her that when someone needed help, Daddy didn't walk away." 1. The elevator chimed softly. The doors began to slide open, revealing the marble expanse of the lobby. The afternoon light, streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The scattered groups of people going about their ordinary lives, unaware that something significant was happening 20 feet away. Ground floor. "After you," Marcus said, gesturing toward the open doors. The three men hesitated, their carefully constructed intimidation cracking against the reality of public space, of witnesses, of the fact that their victim was no longer alone and trapped. Sarah Chen stepped forward first, her heels clicking against the marble with authority that hadn't been there when the elevator doors first opened. She paused just outside, turning back to face her tormentors. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying across the lobby's ambient noise, "I believe our meeting is over." The silver-haired man's face had gone red. "This isn't over, Miss Chen. Not by a long shot." "Actually," said a new voice from behind them, "I think it is." Marcus turned to see a security guard approaching, not building security, but real security. The kind with earpieces and the bearing of someone who'd seen actual combat. He was flanked by two uniformed police officers who looked like they'd been waiting. Sarah Chen smiled for the first time since Marcus had met her. "Perfect timing, as always, Rodriguez." The security guard Rodriguez nodded to her, then fixed his attention on the three men who were suddenly looking much less confident. "Miss Chen's been expecting you, gentlemen. We've had surveillance on the building all day." The compact man took a step backward. "We haven't done anything illegal. Coercion, intimidation, attempted extortion." Rodriguez ticked off the charges on his fingers. "Should I continue?" "We were having a business meeting," the younger man protested. "In a stopped elevator?" One of the police officers stepped forward, hand resting casually on his radio. "That's an interesting place for a meeting." Marcus felt Lily press closer to his leg, her small body warm and solid against him. The adrenaline that had carried him through the last 10 minutes was beginning to fade, replaced by the shaky aftermath of realizing just how badly this could have gone. "Daddy," Lily whispered, "are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. We're fine." Sarah Chen knelt down in front of Lily, her expensive suit creasing against the marble floor. "What's your name, honey?" "Lily Chen. But we're not related, even though we have the same last name. Daddy says Chen is a very common name." Sarah's smile was genuine now, reaching her eyes for the first time. "It is a very common name. But I think your daddy is pretty uncommon." She stood, extending a business card to Marcus. "I owe you a debt I can't repay." Marcus took the card, feeling the weight of expensive paper between his fingers. "You don't owe me anything. I did what anyone would have done." "No." Sarah's voice was firm. "Most people would have walked away. Most people would have decided it wasn't their problem." Behind them, the three men were being escorted toward the building's exit by Rodriguez and the police officers. Their suits were wrinkled now, their authority evaporated in the face of actual consequences. The silver-haired man turned back once, his eyes meeting Marcus's across the lobby. "This isn't over," he mouthed. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, but Sarah Chen stepped into his line of sight, blocking the view. "Don't let him scare you," she said quietly. "Men like that are only dangerous when they think no one is watching. Now everyone's watching." "Are they?" Marcus looked around the lobby, noting the security cameras, the guards, the subtle presence of more plainclothes officers than seemed normal for a Tuesday afternoon. "You were prepared for this." "I've been preparing for this for months." Sarah's expression hardened. "They've been circling like sharks, waiting for the right moment to strike. I just didn't expect them to be quite so direct." Lily tugged at Marcus's sleeve again. "Daddy, can we go get my art project now? I want to show it to the nice lady." Marcus looked at Sarah, who was watching Lily with an expression he couldn't quite read. "We should probably—" "Actually," Sarah interrupted, "would you mind if I came with you? I'd love to see Lily's artwork. And I think we should probably stick together for a while, just in case." She was right, Marcus realized. Walking away now would be like declaring victory in the first quarter of a game that was far from over. Whatever this was, corporate espionage, hostile takeover, something worse, it wasn't going to end with three men being escorted out of a building. "Okay," he said. "But I should warn you, 4-year-old art is abstract." "The best kind," Sarah replied. They walked through the lobby together, an unlikely trio bound by 10 minutes in an elevator that had changed everything. Marcus carried Lily's backpack. Sarah clutched her briefcase. And Lily skipped between them, chattering about finger paints and glitter, and how her teacher Mrs. Rodriguez had the same name as the security man. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright and warm, the city moving around them with its usual indifferent energy. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that a small battle had been fought and won in the space between floors 23 and the ground. "Where's your daughter's school?" Sarah asked as they walked. "Just a few blocks. It's a good program, expensive, but worth it." "Her mom." Marcus paused, the familiar weight of explanation settling on his shoulders. "Her mom isn't in the picture anymore. It's just us." Sarah nodded, not pressing for details. "Single parenting is hard. The hardest job in the world," Marcus agreed. "But also the best one." They walked in comfortable silence for a block, Lily running ahead to examine a flower box, then racing back to grab Marcus's hand. Normal parent things. The kind of afternoon routine that felt precious now that he understood how quickly everything could change. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said as they waited for a light to change. "Sure. What you said in the elevator, about writing stories, about heroes. Did you mean it?" Marcus considered the question, watching Lily hop from one sidewalk square to another, careful not to step on any cracks. "I meant every word. I just never figured out how to make the stories work. Heroes on paper are easy. They always know what to do. They never doubt themselves. They save the day and ride off into the sunset. And real heroes? Real heroes are just people who don't walk away when someone needs help. Even when they're scared. Especially when they're scared." The light changed. They crossed the street, Lily swinging from Marcus's hand like a small pendulum marking time. "I spent 15 years building my company," Sarah said quietly. "Started in my garage with 2 laptops and a credit card. We develop security software, the kind that protects people's privacy, keeps their data safe from exactly the kind of people we met today. That's why they want it. Control the security, control everything." Sarah's grip tightened on her briefcase. "They've been trying to buy me out for 2 years. When that didn't work, they started going after my board members, my investors, my employees. Today was their final offer." "What's in the briefcase?" Marcus asked, though he thought he already knew. "Everything. Source code, client lists, financial records. The heart of everything I've built." She looked down at Lily, who was now singing a song about rainbows under her breath. "I was taking it somewhere safe when they cornered me." They stopped in front of a cheerful yellow building with painted handprints decorating the windows. "Lily's school," Marcus announced. "It looks lovely," Sarah said, and she meant it. As they climbed the steps, Marcus found himself thinking about the men in the elevator, about the look in the silver-haired man's eyes, about the promise that this wasn't over. He was still thinking about it when they entered the bright, crayon-scented world of Lily's preschool, where construction paper flowers covered the walls, and the only threats were scraped knees and hurt feelings. Some problems, Marcus was beginning to understand, followed you wherever you went. Lily's art project turned out to be a handprint, turkey made from construction paper and glitter, with googly eyes that seemed to follow you around the room. She presented it to Sarah, with the solemnity of a diplomat delivering a peace treaty. "This is for you," Lily announced. "Because you were brave in the elevator, and because you like my daddy." Sarah accepted the turkey with the gravity it deserved, holding it up to the light streaming through the classroom windows. "It's absolutely perfect. I'll treasure it. You can put it on your refrigerator. That's where important art goes." "I will definitely put it on my refrigerator." Marcus watched this exchange, while Mrs. Rodriguez, no relation to the security guard, but the coincidence still made him smile, gathered up Lily's other artwork from the week. Normal things. A finger-painted rainbow, a crayon drawing of their apartment building, a collage made from magazine cutouts that was supposed to be their family but looked more like abstract expressionism. The ordinariness of it all felt surreal after the morning's events. Children's laughter echoed from the playground outside. Someone was reading a story in the next classroom, voices rising and falling with practiced drama. The smell of afternoon snacks, apple slices, and goldfish crackers drifted through the halls. This was Lily's world. Safe, predictable, full of finger paints and playground rules, and the kind of problems that could be solved with band-aids and juice boxes. Marcus wanted to keep it that way. "All set, Mrs. Rodriguez said, handing him a folder thick with a week's worth of artistic achievement. Lily had a wonderful first week. She's already made several friends. "I made friends with Emma and Jake and Sophia," Lily reported, bouncing on her toes. "Emma has a hamster named Mr. Whiskers and Jake knows all the dinosaur names, and Sophia can tie her shoes by herself." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." As they walked back toward the street, Sarah fell into step beside him. "She's remarkable," she said quietly. "You're doing something right. Most days, I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. That's parenthood. The fact that you worry about it means you're already ahead of the game." They paused at the corner, waiting for the light. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk, and Marcus found himself scanning the street with new awareness. Looking for black cars with tinted windows, men in expensive suits, faces that didn't belong in this neighborhood of strollers and dog walkers. "They're not coming after us here," Sarah said, reading his expression. "Too public. Too many witnesses. Men like that prefer to operate in shadows. But they are coming." It wasn't a question. Sarah adjusted her grip on the briefcase and on Lily's turkey, which she'd refused to let go of. "Probably. The question is when and how." The light changed. They crossed the street, Lily skipping ahead to examine a fire hydrant that had been painted to look like a Dalmatian. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Of course. Why didn't you just sell? I mean, I'm sure they offered you a fortune. You could start over, build something new." Sarah was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she wasn't going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of years spent fighting battles that most people never saw. "Do you know what happens to women in tech who sell out to men like that?" she asked. "We disappear. They hollow out everything we built, slap their branding on it, and pretend we never existed. Our employees get fired. Our values get discarded. Our vision gets buried under corporate policy and quarterly reports." She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "I didn't spend 15 years building something just to hand it over to people who see it as nothing more than another asset to acquire and monetize." Marcus thought about his own work, the consulting business that paid the bills, but never felt like more than a series of PowerPoint presentations and conference calls. He'd never built anything that mattered enough to fight for, never created something that was truly his. "Besides," Sarah continued, her voice softening, "what kind of example would that set for her?" She nodded toward Lily, who was now trying to convince a small dog to accept the contents of her snack bag. "I want her to grow up in a world where women don't have to choose between success and safety, where standing up for what you believe in isn't considered naive or unrealistic. Even if it's dangerous? Especially if it's dangerous." They walked in silence for another block, the comfortable rhythm of two adults who understood that some conversations needed space to breathe. Lily chattered between them, pointing out flowers and fire hydrants, and a cat sunning itself in a window. Marcus's apartment building came into view, a converted brownstone in a neighborhood that was gentrifying just slowly enough to remain affordable. Home, safety, the place where he and Lily had built their life together, one bedtime story, and pancake breakfast at a time. "Would you like to come up?" he asked, as they climbed the front steps. "I make excellent coffee, and Lily's been talking about showing someone her room all week." Sarah hesitated, her eyes scanning the street behind them. "I should probably—" "Please," Lily interrupted, tugging at Sarah's hand. "I want to show you my books, and my stuffed animals and my telescope that Daddy got me for my birthday." "You have a telescope?" "A real one. Daddy says we can look at the moon tonight if the clouds go away." Sarah looked at Marcus, something unspoken passing between them. The understanding that whatever was coming next, they were probably safer together than apart. "Coffee sounds lovely," she said. Marcus's apartment was on the third floor, a two-bedroom with hardwood floors and windows that caught the afternoon light just right. It was clean but lived in, the kind of space that bore the comfortable marks of daily life. Children's books stacked on the coffee table, a basket of laundry waiting to be folded, photographs on the mantel chronicling 4 years of father-daughter adventures. Lily disappeared immediately into her room, the sound of drawers opening and toys being rearranged, carrying through the thin walls. "It's nice," Sarah said, settling onto the couch with her briefcase still clutched in her lap. "It feels like home." Marcus busied himself in the kitchen, grateful for the familiar routine of grinding beans and measuring water. Normal things. Safe things. "Can I ask what happened to her mother?" Sarah's voice carried carefully from the living room. Marcus paused in his measuring. It was a fair question, especially given the circumstances. "She left when Lily was 8 months old. Said she wasn't ready for motherhood, wasn't cut out for the whole domestic thing." "I'm sorry. Don't be. It was hard at the time. But," he shrugged, starting the coffee maker, "Lily and I figured it out together. We're a good team." "Daddy!" Lily's voice echoed from her bedroom. "Come see. I made a special display." "In a minute, sweetheart." "She reminds me of myself at that age," Sarah said, when Marcus returned to the living room. "Confident. Curious. Completely fearless. The fearless part terrifies me daily." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." Marcus studied Sarah's face in the afternoon light, streaming through his windows. Without the harsh fluorescence of the office building, she looked younger, more vulnerable. The careful armor of professional competence was still there, but cracks were showing. "How long have you known they were planning something like today?" he asked. "Months. My head of security, Rodriguez, the man you met, has been tracking increased surveillance, unusual inquiries about my schedule, attempts to access our building's security systems." Sarah set her coffee cup down with deliberate care. "We knew they were escalating, but we thought they'd stick to financial pressure. Board manipulation, legal challenges. Not physical intimidation. Not in broad daylight, in a public building, with witnesses." Sarah's laugh held no humor. "I underestimated how desperate they've become." "Desperate for what, exactly?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming against the briefcase's leather surface. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone sharing secrets that could get people killed. "Have you ever heard of Blackstone Dynamics?" Marcus shook his head. "Defense contractor. Government surveillance. Private security for very powerful, very unpleasant people." Sarah's expression darkened. "They've been buying up cybersecurity firms for the past 2 years, consolidating control over digital privacy infrastructure." "And your company?" "We're the last major independent. Our software protects journalists, activists, whistleblowers, people who can't afford to have their communications compromised. If Blackstone controls us, they control who gets to speak privately and who doesn't." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "That's not just corporate espionage. That's why 3 men were willing to corner me in an elevator and threaten me into signing papers." Sarah's voice was steady, but Marcus could see the fear underneath. "And it's why they're not going to stop with today's failure." From Lily's room came the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor, followed by her voice calling for them to come see her creation. Marcus looked toward the hallway, then back at Sarah. "What do we do?" "We?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Marcus, you've done more than enough. You saved my life today. But this isn't your fight. Isn't it?" Marcus thought about Lily, about the world she was growing up in, about the kind of place he wanted her to inherit. "You said it yourself, you want her to grow up in a world where women don't have to choose between success and safety, where standing up for what you believe in isn't naive. That's different. This is my company, my responsibility. This is about more than your company. Marcus stood up, pacing to the window that looked out over the street. This is about whether people like us, ordinary people with ordinary lives, just stand by and let bullies win because it's easier than fighting back. And if fighting back gets you killed? Gets Lily killed? The question hung in the air like smoke. "Daddy!" Lily's voice carried from her bedroom, impatient now. "I'm ready for you to see." "Coming, sweetheart," Marcus called back, then turned to Sarah. "I spent my 20s writing stories about heroes who always knew the right thing to do. I never could make those stories work, because they weren't true. Real heroes don't know what's going to happen. They're just as scared as everyone else. So what makes them heroes?" Marcus looked toward Lily's room, where his daughter was waiting to show him something wonderful and important in the way that only 4-year-olds could make things wonderful and important. "They do it anyway," he said quietly. Sarah was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. "You realize that if we do this, really do this, there's no going back. These people don't forgive. They don't forget. Then we better make sure we win." From down the hall came the sound of Lily's voice, raised in song something about sunshine and rainbows that she'd learned at school. Normal kid things. The sound of innocence that deserved protection. Marcus made his choice for the second time that day. "Come on," he said to Sarah, extending his hand. "Let's go see what Lily's been building. And then let's figure out how to build something of our own." Lily had transformed her bedroom into what she called a space museum. Every stuffed animal was arranged in careful rows, each one wearing a construction paper name tag, identifying it as a different planet or star. Her telescope, a child-friendly model with bright plastic components, occupied the place of honor on her desk, aimed toward the window. "This is Jupiter Bear," she announced, holding up a worn teddy bear with a cape made from a dish towel. "And this is Saturn Bunny. And this is Mars Dog. And this is incredible, sweetheart," Marcus said, settling cross-legged on the floor beside her exhibition. "You've created your own solar system." Sarah knelt beside them, her business attire incongruous among the stuffed animals in children's books. But she studied Lily's creation with the same attention she might give to a quarterly report. "Tell me about this one," she said, pointing to a small elephant wearing what appeared to be a silver foil crown. "That's Moon Elephant," Lily said solemnly. "She's very important because she controls the tides. Daddy taught me about tides." "Your daddy is very smart. The smartest daddy in the whole world. He knows everything about space and stories, and how to make pancakes that look like Mickey Mouse." Marcus felt the familiar warmth that came with his daughter's unconditional faith in him, followed immediately by the weight of responsibility that went with it. How do you live up to being someone's everything? How do you make sure you're worthy of that kind of trust? "Lily," Sarah said carefully, "can I ask you something?" "Okay. If you had something really important, something that could help a lot of people, but some bad people wanted to take it away, what would you do?" Lily considered this, with the seriousness that 4-year-olds brought to philosophical questions. "I would hide it," she said finally. "Like a treasure. And then I would tell the good people where it was, so they could protect it." Sarah glanced at Marcus over Lily's head. "That's very wise. But first," Lily continued, "I would make sure the bad people couldn't find it. Maybe I would put it in space, with Moon Elephant. Moon Elephant is very good at keeping secrets." Marcus felt something click into place, an idea forming that was either brilliant or completely insane. "Lily, sweetheart, can you show Sarah your drawing table? I think she'd like to see some of your other artwork." "Okay." Lily bounded toward the small table in the corner, where her art supplies were organized with the careful precision of someone who had been taught to clean up after herself. While she rummaged through her portfolio, Marcus leaned closer to Sarah. "What if she's right?" he whispered. "About what?" "About hiding it. Not in space, but—" Marcus glanced around Lily's room, taking in the careful organization, the way every toy had its place, the inherent logic of a 4-year-old's world. "What if we're thinking about this all wrong?" Sarah's eyes followed his gaze, and he could see her beginning to understand. "You're thinking like them," she said quietly. "Like corporate executives, looking for the obvious places. But what if the obvious place is the last place they'd look? Daddy, look!" Lily had found a drawing she was particularly proud of, a crayon masterpiece that might have been a house, or a rocket ship, or possibly both. "I made this for you, but I forgot to give it to you." Marcus accepted the drawing with appropriate reverence, but his mind was racing. "Lily, remember how you organized your space museum? How you put everything exactly where it belonged?" "Uh-huh. What if we played a game like that? What if Sarah had something very important that needed to be kept safe, and we had to find the perfect hiding place for it?" Lily's eyes lit up with the particular excitement that came with being included in grown-up activities. "Like hide and seek but for grown-ups?" "Exactly like that." Sarah was watching this exchange with growing understanding and what might have been admiration. "What did you have in mind?" she asked. Marcus looked around the apartment, his home, the place where he and Lily had built their life together. It was ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of place that powerful men in expensive suits would never think to look. "When's the last time anyone searched a preschooler's art portfolio for corporate secrets?" he asked. Sarah stared at him. "You can't be serious." "Why not? You said they're looking for source code, financial records, client lists. What if those things were hidden in plain sight, disguised as something so innocent, so obviously unimportant, that no one would ever think to look?" "Daddy," Lily interrupted, "are we going to hide Sarah's treasure? Would you like to help us hide Sarah's treasure, sweetheart?" "Yes." Lily clapped her hands together. "I'm very good at hiding things. I hid my vegetables under my mashed potatoes last week, and Mrs. Rodriguez didn't find them until Tuesday." Sarah laughed, despite herself, the first genuine laugh Marcus had heard from her all day. "I think we might have found our security consultant." For the next hour, they worked together in ways that would have seemed absurd to anyone watching from the outside. Sarah, CEO of a multi-million-dollar technology company, sat cross-legged on a 4-year-old's bedroom floor, carefully transcribing encrypted code onto construction paper with crayons and markers. Marcus helped translate the technical information into something that could be disguised as children's artwork, turning financial projections into graphs that looked like crayon drawings of rainbows, hiding client lists in the form of address books for imaginary friends, transforming proprietary algorithms into what appeared to be recipes for Play-Doh. Lily supervised the entire operation with the authority of someone whose bedroom had been invaded by adults who clearly needed guidance. She provided artistic direction, ensuring that everything looked appropriately childlike, and offered running commentary on their technique. "Sarah, you need more purple in that corner," she instructed, pointing to a piece of paper that contained what Marcus suspected was worth millions of dollars. "Purple makes everything more beautiful." "You're absolutely right," Sarah said, adding purple squiggles around the edges of what looked like a child's drawing, but was actually a complete backup of her company's source code. "And Daddy, that one needs stickers. You can't have important art without stickers." Marcus applied dinosaur stickers to a piece of construction paper that held encrypted financial records, marveling at the surreal nature of the afternoon. 6 hours ago, he'd been a single father picking up his daughter from school. Now he was part of a conspiracy to hide corporate secrets in a preschooler's art collection. "This is either the most brilliant thing we've ever done," Sarah said, carefully coloring inside the lines of what appeared to be a house, but was actually a network topology diagram, or we're both having some kind of stress-induced breakdown. "Why can't it be both?" Marcus replied, adding glitter to a client contact list disguised as a birthday party invitation. As the sun began to set outside Lily's bedroom window, they surveyed their work. Spread across the floor were dozens of pieces of children's artwork, crayon drawings, construction paper collages, finger paintings, glitter-covered masterpieces that looked like nothing more than the creative output of an enthusiastic preschooler. Hidden within those innocent creations was everything Blackstone Dynamics had been trying to steal. "It's perfect," Lily announced, surveying their work with satisfaction. "Now where are we going to hide the treasure?" Marcus looked at the portfolio folder where Lily's legitimate artwork was stored, then at the new additions they'd created. "What if we didn't hide it at all?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Explain. What if we put it exactly where everyone would expect to find a 4-year-old's artwork? In her portfolio, mixed in with her real drawings, displayed on the refrigerator, scattered around the apartment, like any normal parent would do with their kid's art? Hidden in plain sight," Sarah said slowly. "The most obvious place is sometimes the safest place." Lily was already gathering up the papers, organizing them with the same careful attention she'd given to her space museum. "I'll put them with my other pictures," she said. "That way, they'll be safe with my family." Sarah watched Lily work, her expression soft in a way Marcus hadn't seen all day. "You know," she said quietly, "I've been thinking about this all wrong. I've been so focused on protecting what I built that I forgot why I built it in the first place. Which was to create something good, something that made the world a little bit safer for people like us." She gestured around the room, taking in the stuffed animals and children's books, the telescope aimed at the darkening sky, the evidence of a life built on love and hope rather than fear and suspicion. "Maybe that's what we're doing here," Marcus said. "Creating something good." Outside, the first stars were beginning to appear in the deepening twilight. Lily pressed her face to the window, breath fogging the glass as she searched for constellations. "Daddy, can we look at the moon now? I want to show Sarah how the telescope works." Marcus glanced at Sarah, who nodded. "I'd love to see the moon through your telescope, Lily." As they set up the telescope on its small tripod, adjusting the focus until the moon's surface came into sharp relief, Marcus found himself thinking about distance and perspective. How things that seemed impossibly far away could be brought into clear focus with the right tools. How problems that seemed insurmountable could sometimes be solved by changing your point of view. "Wow," Sarah breathed, peering through the eyepiece. "It's incredible. You can see the craters, the mountains." "Daddy says the moon controls the tides," Lily reported proudly. "Like Moon Elephant. Your daddy is right about a lot of things." They took turns at the telescope, passing it back and forth as the night deepened around them. Normal family things, the kind of evening routine that felt precious in its ordinariness. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. "We know where you live." He deleted it without showing the others, but the message had done its job. The reminder that safety was temporary, that the men in expensive suits weren't going to simply disappear because they'd lost one round. "Sarah," he said quietly, while Lily was absorbed in adjusting the telescope's position, "we need to talk about what happens next." She followed his gaze to the phone in his hand, understanding immediately. "They found us. They were always going to find us. The question is what we do about it." Sarah looked at Lily, who was humming softly to herself as she searched for Jupiter through the telescope's lens. "We protect what matters most. And then, we fight back." The moon hung in the sky above them, distant and serene, governing tides and dreams with equal indifference. In a few hours, it would set, and the sun would rise on a day that would determine whether ordinary people could stand up to extraordinary power and win. Marcus looked at his daughter, at the woman who had trusted him with her life's work, at the apartment that had become a fortress built from construction paper and hope. Tomorrow would bring consequences they couldn't yet imagine. But tonight, they had each other, and they had a plan. And they had proof that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world was a 4-year-old's faith that the good guys always win. Sometimes, that had to be enough. Marcus woke to the sound of his phone buzzing insistently against the nightstand. 3:17 a.m. The caller ID showed Rodriguez's name. "They're moving." Rodriguez's voice was tight with urgency. 3 vehicles, full surveillance kit. ETA to your location, approximately 10 minutes. Marcus was already out of bed, moving toward Lily's room on silent feet. How many? At least 9, that we can count. Maybe more. Sarah appeared in the hallway, fully dressed despite the hour. She'd insisted on taking the couch, claiming she was too wired to sleep anyway. From the look of her, she'd been right. Lily, Marcus whispered, gently shaking his daughter's shoulder. Sweetheart, we need to go. She opened her eyes, instantly alert in the way children could be when they sensed something was wrong. Daddy? Remember how we talked about adventures? About how sometimes heroes have to leave quickly? Lily nodded solemnly. Are we going on an adventure? The biggest adventure ever. Sarah was already moving through the apartment, gathering the artwork they'd created earlier. The innocent-looking drawings that contained the corporate secrets worth killing for were scattered across surfaces, like any normal parent's display of their child's creativity. The car's waiting. Downstairs, she said quietly. Rodriguez has a safe house prepared. Marcus helped Lily into her clothes, her small arms obedient even as sleep clung to her movements. She grabbed her favorite stuffed animal, Jupiter Bear, from yesterday's Space Museum, and the small backpack that held her real treasures. A collection of smooth stones, her emergency juice box, and a photo of her and Marcus at last year's zoo visit. Ready, sweetheart? Ready, Daddy. They moved through the apartment like ghosts, gathering essentials and artwork with practiced efficiency. Marcus had never imagined he'd need to know how to evacuate his home in the middle of the night. But parenthood had taught him to prepare for scenarios he'd never considered. The building's back exit led to an alley where Rodriguez waited beside a nondescript sedan, engine running. He was no longer the polished security professional from the lobby. Now he looked like what Marcus suspected he'd always been, a soldier preparing for war. They're 2 blocks out, Rodriguez said as they climbed into the car, moving slow, trying to look casual. Lily pressed her face to the window as they pulled away from the building, watching the familiar streets of her neighborhood slide past in the darkness. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, Marcus said, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. The safe house turned out to be a converted warehouse in an industrial district that looked like it had been abandoned since the 1970 seconds. Inside, however, it was a different story. Banks of computer equipment lined the walls, multiple monitors displaying feeds from cameras positioned throughout the city. A small apartment had been carved out of one corner, basic but comfortable, with a separate room where Lily could sleep. Welcome to the resistance, Sarah said with dark humor as they settled in. Such as it is. Rodriguez was already at work, fingers flying across multiple keyboards as he tracked the movements of their pursuers. They hit your apartment about 5 minutes after we left, he reported. Tore it apart. Professional job, they'll have every inch documented within the hour. Marcus felt a hollow ache thinking about his home, about the life he and Lily had built there being violated by strangers. What were they looking for? Everything. Financial records, computer files, any trace of where you might have hidden Sarah's data. Rodriguez paused, glancing at the artwork Sarah was carefully organizing on a nearby table. They'll never find it. Because they're looking for the wrong thing, Sarah said, holding up a crayon drawing that looked like a child's version of a rainbow but contained encrypted access codes worth millions. They expect corporate espionage to look like corporate espionage. They'll tear apart every hard drive and filing cabinet, but they'll never think to analyze a 4-year-old's finger painting. Lily had found a comfortable spot on a couch that looked like it had been salvaged from a 1990 office building. Jupiter Bear sat beside her as she examined their surroundings with the adaptability of childhood. This is a very big hideout, she observed. Are we superheroes now? Something like that, Marcus said, settling beside her. Do superheroes eat breakfast? Because I'm very hungry. Rodriguez smiled, the first genuinely relaxed expression Marcus had seen from him. Superheroes definitely eat breakfast. I'll see what we have in the kitchen. As Rodriguez rummaged through cabinets, Sarah pulled up a chair beside the couch. Lily, can I tell you a secret? I like secrets. All those pictures we made yesterday? They're very special. They contain information that can help a lot of people. Journalists who tell important stories, doctors who help sick people in faraway places, teachers who want to share knowledge without bad people stopping them. Lily considered this with her characteristic seriousness. Like a superpower? Exactly like a superpower. But the bad people want to steal that power and use it to hurt people instead of helping them. That's not fair. No, it's not fair. But sometimes unfair things happen, and good people have to work together to make them fair again. Marcus watched this conversation with growing admiration for Sarah's ability to translate complex adult realities into language a child could understand without being frightened by them. It was a skill he'd been developing himself over the past 3 years, but she had it naturally. So what do we do? Lily asked. We make sure the right people get the superpower, Sarah said. People who will use it to help, not hurt. Rodriguez returned with a breakfast that consisted of cereal, orange juice, and what appeared to be military-grade coffee. Gourmet dining, he apologized. We weren't exactly prepared for family accommodations. This is perfect, Marcus said, and meant it. There was something oddly comforting about sharing a simple meal in this strange, temporary sanctuary. Like a family camping trip, if camping trips involved corporate espionage and armed security details. Rodriguez, Sarah said as they ate. What's our timeline? Blackstone will regroup within hours. They'll analyze what they found or didn't find at Marcus's apartment, then expand their search. Banks, storage facilities, anyone in your professional or personal networks. They won't find anything. No, but they'll hurt people looking. And eventually, they'll realize they need to change tactics. Marcus felt a chill. Meaning? Meaning they'll stop trying to steal the information and start trying to eliminate the people who have it. The words hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. Lily looked up from her cereal. Are the bad people going to try to hurt us? Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. How do you answer that question honestly, without terrifying a 4-year-old? Some bad people might try, Sarah said carefully. But we have good people protecting us, and we have a plan to make sure the bad people can't win. What's the plan? Marcus realized that he didn't actually know. They'd successfully hidden Sarah's corporate secrets in the most unlikely place imaginable. But that was just the first step. Eventually, they'd need to do something with those secrets. Get them to people who could use them to expose Blackstone's activities, to prevent the consolidation of power that Sarah had been fighting against. The plan, Sarah said slowly, working it out as she spoke, is to give the superpower to as many good people as possible. So many that the bad people can't stop all of them. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. Distributed network. Smart. But how do we do that without revealing where the information is hidden? Marcus asked. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it reached her eyes completely. We throw a party. A party? An art show. A celebration of children's creativity, featuring the work of promising young artists. Sarah gestured toward the scattered drawings on the table. We invite journalists, tech bloggers, security researchers, people who would recognize the significance of what they're seeing, if they knew how to look. Marcus stared at her. You want to display corporate secrets in a public art gallery. I want to hide them in the most obvious place of all. In plain sight, surrounded by witnesses, protected by the assumption that no one would be crazy enough to do exactly what we're doing. Lily clapped her hands together. I love art shows. Can I wear my fancy dress? You can wear your fanciest dress, Sarah promised. Rodriguez was shaking his head, but he was smiling. It's insane. The best plans usually are, Sarah said. They spent the rest of the morning planning what might have been the most unconventional art exhibition in history. Rodriguez used his network of contacts to identify a gallery space that could be rented on short notice. A trendy spot in the arts district that specialized in emerging and experimental work. Sarah reached out to journalists and tech industry insiders, people who would understand the significance of what they were seeing once they understood what to look for. Marcus found himself in charge of artistic direction, helping to organize Lily's legitimate artwork alongside the pieces that contained hidden corporate secrets. It was like curating a museum exhibition, where half the pieces were exactly what they appeared to be, and the other half were cryptographic puzzles disguised as finger paintings. "This one goes here," Lily announced, carefully positioning a drawing that looked like a house, but contained source code for privacy protection algorithms. "And this one goes next to it, because the colors match." She was treating the entire enterprise as an elaborate game, which was probably the only way any of them could function under the circumstances. By embracing the absurdity of the situation, they were able to focus on the details that would make it work. By afternoon, they had a plan. By evening, they had a venue and a guest list. By the time Lily fell asleep on the warehouse couch, clutching Jupiter Bear and dreaming whatever dreams 4-year-olds have about art shows and adventures, they were ready to execute what might have been the most audacious act of corporate whistleblowing in history, or the most elaborate way to get themselves killed. Marcus sat watching his daughter sleep, thinking about choices and consequences, about the moment in the elevator when he could have walked away and chosen safety over principle. He didn't regret it. Even now, even knowing what was coming, he didn't regret it. Sarah settled beside him, her own exhaustion finally showing. Second thoughts? Third and fourth thoughts. But not regrets. Good. She was quiet for a moment. "You know, I've been thinking about what Lily said yesterday. About hiding treasures in space, with Moon Elephant. What about it? Maybe that's what we're really doing here. Not just hiding corporate secrets or fighting corporate takeovers. Maybe we're putting something precious, somewhere safe, the idea that ordinary people can stand up to extraordinary power and win." Marcus looked at the artwork, scattered around the warehouse, children's drawings that contained the power to change the world, protected by nothing more than the assumption that such power could never be hidden in something so innocent. "Think it'll work?" he asked. Sarah smiled, and in the dim light of the warehouse, surrounded by computers and corporate secrets and his sleeping daughter's dreams, she looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had built something worth fighting for and wasn't going to give up without a fight. "Ask me tomorrow," she said. Tomorrow would bring the art show, the revelation, the moment when they would either change everything or lose everything trying. But tonight, they had each other. And they had a plan. And they had proof that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the world was the simple faith that good people could find a way to win. Sometimes that had to be enough. The Meridian Gallery occupied a converted warehouse in the Arts District, its exposed brick walls and industrial lighting perfect for displaying the kind of experimental work that made critics either furious or euphoric. On any other night, it might have hosted installations by emerging sculptors or photographs exploring urban decay. Tonight, it was home to the most dangerous children's art exhibition in corporate history. Lily stood in the center of the gallery, wearing her favorite dress, navy blue with silver stars that caught the track lighting like tiny galaxies. She held Marcus's hand with one small fist and clutched Jupiter Bear with the other, surveying the crowd with the solemn authority of an artist at her first major show. "There are a lot of people here," she observed, her voice carrying the particular mix of excitement and nervousness that came with being the center of attention. "There are," Marcus agreed, though his attention was focused on scanning faces, looking for the expensive suits and predatory smiles that would signal Blackstone's arrival. They would come, he was certain of that. The question was when and how many. Sarah moved through the crowd like the CEO she was, even dressed down in jeans and a cashmere sweater that made her look like any other parent at a school art show. She was working the room, introducing herself to journalists and tech bloggers, planting seeds of curiosity about the innovative educational project that had inspired the exhibition. The artwork was displayed exactly as they had planned. Lily's legitimate drawings mixed seamlessly with the pieces, that contained hidden corporate secrets. To anyone not looking for them, they were simply the charming, chaotic creations of a talented 4-year-old. Finger paintings and crayon drawings, construction paper collages decorated with stickers and glitter, the kind of art that belonged on refrigerators and classroom bulletin boards. Hidden within those innocent creations was everything Blackstone Dynamics had been trying to steal. "Daddy, look." Lily pointed toward a cluster of adults, examining one of her pieces, a rainbow that was actually encrypted source code for privacy protection software. "They really like my rainbow." "They do, sweetheart. It's a very special rainbow." Rodriguez materialized beside them, his security detail scattered throughout the gallery in plain clothes, looking like art enthusiasts and hipster gallery goers. "We've got movement outside," he murmured. 3 vehicles, just like before. Marcus felt his chest tighten. "How long?" "Minutes." Across the gallery, Sarah caught his eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. The signal they'd agreed on. The journalists were in position, cameras ready, witnesses prepared. Whatever happened next would happen in public, under lights, with documentation that couldn't be suppressed or denied. "Lily." Marcus knelt down beside his daughter, bringing himself to her eye level. "Remember what we talked about? About how sometimes heroes have to be very brave?" She nodded solemnly. "Are the bad people coming?" "They might be, but we're ready for them. And we have lots of good people here to help us." Marcus looked around the gallery journalists, with their cameras and notebooks. Tech workers who understood the implications of what they were about to witness, ordinary people who had come to see children's art, and were about to become part of something much larger. "We do, sweetheart. We have a whole army of good people." The gallery's front door opened with a chime that seemed to echo through the sudden silence. 3 men in expensive suits entered, their presence changing the atmosphere like a cold front moving through. The silver-haired man from the elevator led them, his smile as predatory as ever. The compact man flanked him on the left, the younger one on the right. They moved through the crowd with the kind of aggressive confidence that came from years of intimidating people into compliance. But something was different now. The crowd didn't part for them. Instead, people turned to look, cameras began flashing, journalists started taking notes. The gallery's lighting was harsh and unforgiving, revealing every detail of their faces, their clothing, their expressions. They were no longer hunters operating in shadows. They were specimens under a microscope. "Miss Chen," the silver-haired man called out, his voice carrying across the gallery. "What a surprise to find you here." Sarah turned from her conversation with a tech blogger, her expression calm and professional. "Mr. Harrison, I wasn't expecting Blackstone to take such an interest in children's art." "Oh, but we're very interested in children," Harrison replied, his smile never wavering. "Particularly when they're being used as pawns in games they don't understand." A ripple of unease went through the crowd. Cameras continued flashing. Someone was live-streaming the confrontation. Marcus could see the phone held up, the red recording light blinking steadily. Lily pressed closer to his leg, sensing the change in atmosphere. "Daddy, those are the bad men from the elevator." Her voice carried in the gallery's acoustics, clear and innocent, and immediately recognizable to everyone who had been following the story. The little girl from the elevator. The child who had been present when 3 men cornered a businesswoman in a confined space. Harrison's smile flickered. "Now, sweetie, that's not very nice. We were just having a grown-up conversation with the nice lady. My daddy says you were being bullies," Lily replied with 4-year-old directness. "And bullies are bad." The crowd was listening now. Phones recording, journalists scribbling notes. This wasn't going according to Harrison's script. "Mr. Harrison," Sarah said, her voice projecting across the gallery, "I think you should know that several people here tonight are very interested in corporate security, particularly the kind that protects journalists, activists, and whistleblowers from surveillance." She gestured toward the artwork surrounding them, dozens of pieces that looked like children's drawings, but contained the digital keys to privacy and freedom. Harrison's eyes swept the gallery, taking in the crowd, the cameras, the increasingly hostile atmosphere. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Marcus said, stepping forward with Lily still holding his hand. "Just consequences." "Consequences." The compact man took a threatening step forward, then stopped as a dozen phones swung toward him, cameras capturing every movement. "For thinking you could intimidate a woman in an elevator," Marcus continued. "For thinking you could steal her life's work. For thinking that power and money could silence people who were willing to stand up and say no. You have no idea what you're dealing with," Harrison said, but his voice lacked the authority it had carried in the elevator. In this public space, surrounded by witnesses, he was just another bully exposed to the light. "Actually," said a voice from near the gallery's entrance, "we know exactly what we're dealing with." A woman in her 50s entered the gallery, her press credentials clearly visible, flanked by a camera operator and sound technician. Marcus recognized her from the Evening News investigative reporter, the kind who had built her career exposing exactly the kind of corporate malfeasance that Blackstone represented. "Angela Martinez, Channel 7 News," she announced. "We've been investigating Blackstone Dynamics acquisition practices for months. Corporate extortion, intimidation of female executives, illegal surveillance of private citizens. Tonight, we have witnesses, documentation, and," she gestured toward the artwork surrounding them, "evidence." Harrison's composure finally cracked completely. "You have nothing. Children's drawings and wild accusations." "We have source code," Sarah said quietly. "Financial records, client lists, corporate communications, detailing illegal surveillance operations. All of it authenticated. All of it verified. All of it hidden in plain sight." She moved to stand beside one of Lily's drawings, a finger painting that looked like abstract art but contained encrypted evidence of Blackstone's criminal activities. Hidden, where no one would think to look. In the artwork of a 4-year-old girl whose father was brave enough to step into an elevator when someone needed help. The gallery fell silent, except for the whisper of camera shutters and the soft hum of recording equipment. Lily looked up at her father, then at Sarah, then at the crowd of adults who were all watching her, with expressions she was too young to fully understand. "Did we win?" she asked in a voice that carried to every corner of the gallery. Marcus knelt down beside her, pulling her into a hug that smelled like construction paper and hope. "Yeah, sweetheart. I think we won." Harrison and his men were already moving toward the exit, their expensive suits wrinkled, their authority evaporated in the face of public exposure and criminal liability. They pushed through the crowd without speaking. No longer predators but prey fleeing toward whatever shadows might still shelter them. The journalists surged forward, questions flying like confetti. The tech workers began examining the artwork with new understanding, recognizing the genius of hiding corporate secrets in children's drawings. The ordinary people who had come for an art show found themselves witnesses to something that would be studied in business schools and journalism programs for decades to come. But Marcus barely noticed any of it. His attention was focused on his daughter, who was showing Jupiter Bear to a reporter while explaining the finer points of her space museum with the authority of someone who had helped save the world before nap time. Sarah appeared beside them, her own relief evident in the way her shoulders had finally relaxed. "How are you holding up?" "Ask me tomorrow," Marcus said, echoing her words from the night before. "Fair enough." Sarah looked around the gallery, taking in the controlled chaos of journalists and investigators and ordinary people who had become part of something extraordinary. "You know, I've been thinking about what happens next." "Which is?" "Well, I'll need to rebuild my security team. Find people I can trust completely. People who understand that sometimes protecting what matters most means standing up to bullies, even when it's dangerous." Marcus looked down at Lily, who was now attempting to teach a tech blogger how to properly pet Jupiter Bear. "That sounds like important work." "It is. It's also the kind of work that requires flexible hours, understanding of family obligations, and a deep appreciation for the strategic value of children's artwork. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, not quite hope, but the possibility of hope. The idea that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to build something good out of the chaos of the past few days. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to be part of something that matters. To help build a world where people like Lily can grow up without fear, where standing up for what's right isn't considered naive or dangerous. Marcus thought about his consulting work, about the PowerPoint presentations and conference calls that paid the bills, but never felt like more than a way to mark time. Then he thought about the past 2 days, about the feeling of doing something that actually mattered, that could change things for the better. Does the job come with good health insurance? Sarah laughed, genuine, unguarded. The sound of someone who had been carrying the weight of the world and finally found people willing to help her carry it. The best health insurance. And flexible scheduling. And bring your daughter to work days whenever necessary. In that case, Marcus said, I think we're interested. An hour later, after the journalists had gotten their interviews and the investigators had documented the evidence, and the art enthusiasts had marveled at the most unconventional exhibition in gallery history, the three of them found themselves alone in the warehouse that had been their temporary sanctuary. Lily was asleep on the couch again, Jupiter Bear tucked under her arm, exhausted by her first day as an international hero. The artwork that had saved the world was scattered around them, looking once again like nothing more than the creative output of a talented 4-year-old. So what happens now? Marcus asked, settling into a chair beside Sarah. Now we build something better, she said. Something that can't be taken down by men in expensive suits who think power and money are the only things that matter. Marcus looked at his sleeping daughter, thinking about the world she was growing up in, about the kind of place he wanted her to inherit. A world where standing up for what's right wasn't the exception, but the rule. Where ordinary people could make extraordinary differences. Where heroes weren't found in stories but in everyday moments of courage and compassion. You know, he said quietly, I think I'm finally ready to write that story. The one about heroes who don't know what they're doing but do it anyway. What's it about? Marcus smiled. Watching Lily dream whatever dreams 4-year-olds have when they've helped save the world before bedtime. It's about a single father who gets on the wrong elevator at exactly the right time, he said, and discovers that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is the simple choice to not walk away when someone needs help. Sarah nodded, understanding passing between them like shared breath. I'd like to read that story someday. I'll make sure you get the first copy. Outside, the city continued its restless movement. Millions of people living their lives, making choices, deciding moment by moment what kind of world they wanted to build. Most of them would never know about the art show that changed everything, about the corporate secrets hidden in finger paintings, about the single father, and the CEO, and the 4-year-old who proved that ordinary people could stand up to extraordinary power and win. But the world was different now because of what they had done. Safer, more just. A little bit closer to the kind of place where heroes were made not in stories but in the everyday choice to do the right thing, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Marcus reached over and adjusted the blanket around his daughter's small shoulders, thinking about tomorrow and all the tomorrows that would follow. There would be challenges ahead, consequences to navigate, a new life to build from the ruins of the old one. But tonight, they had each other. And they had proof that sometimes the most ordinary people could do the most extraordinary things. And they had the quiet satisfaction that came from knowing they had chosen courage over safety, principle over convenience, hope over fear. Sometimes, that was everything. In the morning, the sun would rise on a world where 3 men in expensive suits were facing criminal charges, where a woman's life work would continue protecting the people who needed it most, and where a 4-year-old's artwork would be studied by security experts and displayed in museums as proof that the most powerful secrets could be hidden in the most innocent places. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight was for sleeping safely, dreaming peacefully, and trusting that good people would always find a way to protect what mattered most. If you enjoy this story, I want you to click the subscribe button for more stories like this. This will mean a lot for the channel. Thank you.